Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, VELUX Foundation, and all of you here. I'll do my best to present our work. It's first just a brief introduction of myself, my own background. I'm an architect. I went to the AA in London, and then when I finished the AA studies, I decided to come and work for an engineer, because I felt that as an architect, you need to understand how to build things, how to make things. So I had the great fortune of working with Peter Rice, and the first project I was working on was the Museum of Science and Industry at La Villette, and we invented this system of it's not working, of cables and suspended glass. And it was quite an experience then mixing engineering and architecture. And that was what Peter Rice set out to do at RFR, together with Martin Francis and Ian Ritchie. It was, as he said, create a laboratory for mixing the disciplines to create holistic design. And I think that's the bottom line here. It's holistic design which marries engineering and architecture. And I worked with Peter until '92, when sadly he passed away. This was the last project I worked on with him, and natural light was very much a part of this project, because it was marrying natural light with natural materials, with stone. So it's the west front of Lille Cathedral. A cathedral was built, it's recent, it's a 19th century cathedral, but it had been finished. So the idea of inserting into an existing building a new facade that represented the spirit and the life of that building. And that's, again, a way what we're trying to do at Marine, is to mix a contemporary intervention into an existing building and to bring out its qualities. So here, together with Peter, the idea of using stone, translucent stone and structural stone, and then also that bead of light going around the edge, which separates clearly what we're doing from what the existing was. And it's quite interesting that as we were working on this, one day Peter said, we're trying to make it as transparent as possible to get as much light in as possible. He said, now hang on a second, in a cathedral, the light must come from above, because in the ritual, the Christian ritual, the light is symbolic of the deity, and its spiritual aspect is very, very important. And he said, if you have too much light coming from behind us, that'll give an imbalance into the cathedral. So we consciously thickened up the stone, in which case you read all this veining and the delicacy of the stone, and obviously its natural content. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about another project I had the great fortune to work on with Peter. Peter Rice was asked by IMP to work with him on the Louvre Museum. We helped him initially on the pyramid, but then the upside-down pyramid, the inverted pyramid, was something that IMP asked Peter to work on personally. And it's interesting, again, this project, all of the interventions, the Grand Pyramid, the inverted pyramid, the Cour des Finances skylights, and the future, the one I'll talk about in more detail, this one here, the Art d'Islam, they're all interventions to transform a palace into a museum. And again, that's what we're trying to do in the Hôtel de Marine, is transform a historic monument that was the center for the Navy into a public space where people can understand and have the building has a new life. So this slide, I found it's very representative. It's lovely. The inverted pyramid is really a work of genius, of Pei. Using 98% transparent, low iron glass, which becomes a reflective surface. So it's both transparent and reflective, sending in a maximum of daylight. And then also becoming, because it's at 45 degrees, a mirror. So when you're in one of the corridors underneath in the space at the Louvre, you see this brilliant reflective diamond at the end. And it's just because of the angle and the reflectivity. It really is very, very clever. And also, so you get direct light projected through the pure transparency, you get the reflected light on the glass, and then you also get this incredible play of iridescence, where the light is refracted and sparkles and gives another meaning. So I was then asked by Rudy Ricciotti and Mario Bellini to help them design the roof for the Islamic arts collection in the Louvre, the last courtyard, the Cour de Visconti. And it was a pleasure to work with them both and to do this project, which is the most recent intervention into the Louvre. How do you create something contemporary in a monument as historic and as grand and untouchable, if you will, as the Louvre? And so the idea was to create a contemporary counterpoint, something that's fluid in movement. Its textures pick up the textures in the stone, and the fluidity is a very, very interesting balance to the stone. So this little conceptual sketch of how it works, what we did is created this mesh of steel structure, thick where it needs to be, to where it has the support, and thin on the edges. So virtually you only read this thin leaf of roof. The whole structure is transparent for light. Light comes through the meshes on the top, it comes through the glass, and then it's filtered through an inner layer, which I'll show you later, which masks the structure, so you never actually see the structure. The columns are inclined to give a sense of drama and dynamic, along with the same fluidity of the roof. There's no structure in the facades whatsoever. It's pure low iron glass, so the whole roof appears to be floating. But one of the important detail is the mesh. If you see that down at the bottom, there's a honeycomb mesh which filters the light, and I'll show you that later. So this is how it goes together. There's this mesh of stainless structure, and then the mesh that filters the light and hides all the stuff up in the roof. Then we didn't want the pure glass, reflective glass. We wanted this soft mesh that was much more compatible with the stone of the courtyard, operable so you can clean it. And this is the detail of the mesh. On the left is what it looks like from underneath, and on the right is what it's actually. You've got this honeycomb of aluminium which directs the view, so you never actually see obliquely the structure. You only get the light that comes down through it. It's a very simple device, but it works extremely well. So that when you're in the space, you don't actually see the structure. You just see the mesh, but if you look through it, you actually see the facades, which is an important part of what they wanted to do. So, but from inside, you get this general feeling of a light floating, luminous veil, which is what Mario called it. He wanted this luminous veil to be floating. This is just a little thing. Also, I won a competition to do some electric pylons. And here, I'm just showing this slide because it's obviously cheating in a way. It's in Italy where this light is so strong. But when you have this, it was crafting, the way we crafted the steel, that you get the sharp edges and the shadows. You get the bold light and the dark shadows that brings up a very, very bold and expression of what we're trying to show here. The theme for these pylons was gemolio, which means a green shoot. So we wanted something to make these steel pylons look like leaves of green shoots. So in the landscape, you see these very thin, slender light. And it's just a simple thing of looking at steel, looking at how you can detail it. Another project I want to go through quickly is the Climate Ribbon in Miami. A project I did with Bernardo Forbrescia of Architectonica and Swire Properties, where we were asked to develop this roof for a pedestrian street that's elevated above the urban vehicular streets. It's a shopping center, to make a sort of a world for pedestrians that is got a microclimate of its own within the climate in Miami, to try and make it as pleasant as possible within the context of the Miami weather. So we created this system of blades that protect from the sun. The east-west direction, the blades are protecting from the southerly sun, and the north-south one is protecting from the westerly sun. So the blades was a logical choice for that direction. And then we also shaped it so that the roof actually captures the breeze that comes off the sea and funnels it through, slightly accelerating it. So you get always a feeling of slight breeze moving on your skin, and it gives a sense of comfort. It really does work. You go there and you feel the breeze, you feel much more comfortable. It can be hot, it can be damp and humid, but when the breeze is moving, it makes a difference. And then also, we did a parametric study. Sébastien Perrault of my studio did this, which was simulating the angle of parametric study of, and we've seen a lot of that today, is every little triangle that's created is what informs the shape of the blades. So then we played with the blades, made them more fluid, made them more sculptural, because in the end, what you see is the visual parametric is the one that's most important. And so we wanted to get this feeling of fluidity, expression of wind, expression of nature. And also when the clouds go over it, people ask me, does it move? And it's actually just because of the way it picks up the light and it responds to the daylight. We're always being able to see the sky, but it has the sense of moving. So this is another inspiration for us for the marine project, is just dealing with daylight. This diffuse daylight, reflecting it, playing within it, making a sculptural effect out of it. And it's then become sort of a sculptural piece for them. It's become a symbol for them, for the Brickell City Centre. And it becomes an icon then of nature, of wind, and of the sun. So the marine project itself, I was asked by Christophe Bottineau of 2BDM and the CMN to work together to design this roof with them. And it's been a fantastic experience. It's the Hôtel de Marine on Place de la Concorde. It was housed the Marine for many years, and it's now being transformed. The Marine is now in the 15th arrondissement, and so they've transforming the space into a cultural facility, and so it's no longer offices, and you need a courtyard, you need an entrance, a new entrance. You also, in the original building by Gabriel, was added to. So that little diagram up here shows the top floors were actually added later on. And on the right is the courtyard they wanted to use as the main entrance. So it's a dark corridor. It's a dark courtyard, rather. The attic levels that were added actually cut out even more daylight. So it was quite dark and needed attention. So the first thing we did, you've seen this, all these simulations today, was to use this software, desktop software that we download and that the young team at the studio use this quite efficiently. In the winter, there's no daylight, no direct sunlight gets to the bottom of the courtyard. Even in June, you only get a couple of hours in the courtyard. So that was the problem, is how we improve the daylight. And another thing that inspired us was the finishes of the Marine. The interior design of the Hôtel de la Marine is absolutely splendid. These incredible chandeliers and gilded decorations, all about light, again. It's bringing in daylight, letting that brighten our lives. And the way the chandeliers work is they take a candle and just bounce the light around, reflecting it endlessly. So we thought that this would be an interesting model for us. And the geometry, this radial geometry, the grandeur of this, how do we do something today in this context? So we looked at jewels. Jewels are a way, they do the same thing, is take the facets of the way the jewel is sculpted. It bounces light around, sparkles, refracts it, reflects it. So we also then looked at the geometry. Jewels have this beautiful geometry. And so how we can compose the structure inspired by this sort of geometry. So this is a plan of the skylight as we're doing it, or actually, I think the better word is a daylight chandelier is what I want to call it, because we're trying to simulate the chandeliers of the existing Marine but using daylight instead of candles. So the structure is 4 triangles that are just opened up to make a pyramidal surface. And then on the edges, the hips, if you will, of the pyramids, those are open. There's no structure there. And each of these triangles is propped up with a tie and a strut to try and get the feeling of opening. It's also dense around the perimeter, around the edge. And the reason for that density, the densification, if you will, is to mask the upper floors that were added later on. And you'll see in the images that the way when the structure is densified around the perimeter, it masks the direct view of the attics, which were not part of the Gabriel composition. So the concept of what we do with the daylight is we use a lot of mirrors. We put mirrors around the upper floors, the attic floors. Everything that's red in the little sketch is a mirror. And then all of the structure is clad in mirror as well. So the idea is to try not to cut out daylight, because when you put a glass roof above, no matter what you do, it's going to be shadow. So we try to minimize the shadows by putting this mirror cladding on the structure, and then also by using the mirrors to magnify the amount of light that actually comes in. So this is what we did to the structure. So you can see here the 4 different pyramids that are propped up, triangles that are propped up. And then all of the structural members are triangles, clad with mirror. And on the right is a photograph of another project I'm doing, where you can see that this beam is clad in mirror. If it doesn't have any undersurface, you don't get a surface that picks up shadow. You just get the 2 faces that reflect the sky on either side. So all of the structure is clad in mirror. These are the mirrors around the edge, around the roof, the perimeter of the courtyard, on the attic portion. And that's how we bounce the light then onto the structure, and then which then bounces it down to the lower floors. So this is a simple simulation that some of the members of my team did. That's Laia Hermela from my team. Shows that on the right, what you get on the 21st of January is the sunlight on a sunny day, but on the left is the simulation of what the mixture of the mirrors and the cladding would do to bounce the light around inside. So, and you get these wonderful patterns of the way the light is bounced, which reflect the geometry of the skylight. And then we added beneath the structure, so you don't get too literal a reading of the structure with the mirrors. We wanted to diffuse it slightly. And this was Christophe, was part of our discussions together, is we thought it'd be nice to kind of soften it. And so we've created a radial pattern of diffusers, which are in a slightly reflective frosted glass. And so the slightly reflective is to pick up the reflectivity, to bounce as much light as we can down. They're all vertical, so that there's no shadow created. There's just vertical blades. And then the frostedness actually diffuses the structure. You don't actually read the structural grid, so you get this soft expression. And then also the courtyard, this is the Bureau d'études Choulet, who did some very inventive thermal studies and amelioration, not by adding heating or putting on double glazing. We all agreed from the beginning we don't use double glazing. We just optimize the climate the way it is. So the red is the external environment, the conditions of temperature, but by modulating with using ventilation and some low temperature heating in the floor, that you can actually modulate the extremes of temperature to make it a comfortable space. And here it is today. Everything that's red is removable, is going to be demolished, is temporary rather. Eiffel construction company is building it. They're the people we work with in fact, both of the pyramids in the Louvre, also way back, right to the beginning, the facade bioclimatique at La Villette. And so it's going up today. This photograph was taken yesterday on a rainy day, so it'll be happening soon. So this is here's a presentation then of the Marine, and I have to say, VELUX Foundation have been an incredible support for us. To have them support us and give us their blessing has helped the project, has helped us, has helped the client, and everybody get confidence. And I think that was the message that Peter Rice gave to me more than anything else. We must have confidence in what we do. Anyway, and this is what it'll look like at night. Thank you very much.